Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the 4-H Leadership Learning Series. We're very happy to have you here. I know some of you were on the last call with Leslie when we did our positive youth development model. So happy to have you back. If this is your first time joining us for one of these webinars, welcome, welcome. Happy to have you here. We put these learning leader webinars on to give you an opportunity to maybe learn something new about the 4-H program or expand your skills, or at the very least, connect with leaders from around the province. My name is Lauren Bernardi, for those of you that I haven't met. I'm a youth development specialist based out of Abbotsford at our Ministry of Agriculture Abbotsford Agriculture Centre. From the traditional and unceded territories of the Sumas, Katzie, and Stalo First Nations. So I'm just going to run through a few quick housekeeping notes here, and then I will pass it off to our lovely presenter, Catherine. So as per usual, we're pretty used to this this technological environment, but please keep yourself on mute unless you're going to ask a question, and then you're more than welcome to unmute yourself. That's no problem. I will be monitoring the chat, so if you do have a burning question, you're welcome to put it in there or jot it down, and like I said, you can come off mute when we have a moment to do so. You are welcome to keep your cameras on because we love to see your smiling faces, but it's definitely not necessary. I'm sure some of you are still eating your breakfast this morning, so no problem at all. Like I said, we are recording this session and posting it on YouTube later, as we do with all of our leader learning webinars. And because we're recording, we're just going to ask to please take care to maintain confidentiality of members, fellow 4-H leaders, other staff. Some of the topics that we're going to talk about today may bring up discussions about specific situations that you've encountered during your 4-H leadership. So just make sure that you're taking extra care when we're using names and identifying people. Okay, woo! We are so excited to have Catherine Miller-Mort from 4-H Canada with us this morning / this afternoon. She is joining us here today to teach us more about how to navigate leadership dynamics through collaboration and constructive conversations in club management, which I know is something we're all really looking forward to. Can never have too many skills in this area. So Catherine, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. So thank you everyone for joining us and for that fabulous introduction, Lauren. Let me just get my slides here. So thank you, Lauren, for your land acknowledgement. I'm just going to tack a little bit of mine onto that. So I want to acknowledge that to begin by acknowledging that the Indigenous peoples of all the lands we're on today, so while we're meeting on a virtual platform, I'm coming to you from the city of Oshawa, which is situated on the lands within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga, the Chippewa, Anishinaabe, and the signatories of the Williams Treaties, which include the Mississaugas of Scugog Island, Hiawatha, Curve Lake, and Alderville First Nations, and the Chippewa of Georgina Island, Rama, and the Beausoleil First Nations. We acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home, and we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people. As an organization connected to the land, it's especially important that we work together towards greater reconciliation and take time to reflect on what that means. I am a reader, and so part of my personal journey on reconciliation is to continue reading Indigenous authors. So I just wanted to highlight a book that I'm reading now. You can see it here. This is Indigenomics, Taking a Seat at the Economic Table. Now you can't see it. Anyway, I will share that there. Leslie's going to hold her up. We're all reading them because they were recommended by a speaker at a recent agriculture conference. It's called Indigenomics, Taking a Seat at the Economic Table by Carol Ann Hilton. And if you have any books related to, or that you've enjoyed, especially relating to Indigenous relations in Canada, we would love for you to throw that in the chat or send me an email later on, because I am collecting book suggestions for life. Here we go. So today, woo, I jumped us way ahead. All right. So today, what are we going to do? I've been a director with 4-H Canada for about a year and a half. I'm the director of risk management and accreditation. And one of the things that we've been working on is improved conflict resolution and misconduct procedures. What we've noticed is that by the time these matters get to me or to Alida or to the provincial body, they are already explosive and difficult to walk back. So we've put this presentation, this workshop together to help provide some supports and to get leaders thinking about or working through conflict before it becomes something bigger. And in hopes to give you some tools so that you never have to email me or Alida about your conflict issues. You can stick to emailing me about book recommendations. Like Lauren mentioned earlier, you may have some specific experiences of conflict that made you decide to sign up for this workshop. And I hope that this workshop, this conversation can help you get some tools to take back to your club or to your team to work on. However, we are going to try and stay broad in this session. So if there's a specific incident or an ongoing challenge that you're experiencing, we'll either ask you to move it offline, or maybe we can talk at the end of the session to address more when we turn the recording off, to address any specific instances that you want to brainstorm around. When we look at conflict and working together, one of the things that I like to always remind myself, I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I work with people and I am a volunteer. So I experience a ton of conflict in life. And one of the things that I really love to try to remember is that the only thing I really have control over is my actions, right? I have control over my actions and my reactions when I'm in a conflict situation. So that's one of the things we're going to work on, some skills for thinking about how we can deal with conflict, knowing we're the only ones who have a lot of that control. Okay. So we're going to start out by talking about some definitions, just to get a little bit of clarity on what we're looking at. And so we have conflict. Conflict arises when we have two or more individuals in a state of opposition concerning morals, principles, or personal agendas. Two or more counts here. If you have one person who's frustrated or angry about something, that might not be a conflict situation. That's a one person perhaps misconduct or performance, or I mean, there's a potential for conflict there, but if it's one person, it may not, some of these conflict resolution skills may not come into play as well. Performance management, this is the assessment of how well someone is doing in relation to their position descriptions. So are they meeting the expectations of a club leader? Are they meeting the expectations of someone in a job? And finally, misconduct issues. These are things that in our case, they're actions against the code of conduct, against law, against policy. They can also arise when performance or behavior in a conflict has escalated to the point where corrective action is necessary. We're going to do a little bit of a definitions exercise now, but we're not going to talk too much about misconduct or performance management in this workshop. It's not your role as a club leader to deal with that. That's something that we really encourage you, if there's a performance management and misconduct issues, to get outside help. Okay. So what I want to do now, just using those three terms, conflict, misconduct, and performance management, we'll go through these definitions. And if you can either pop into the chat, which I think I can see here, yep, or unmute and speak up what you think, which of the three definitions you think this is. And we're going to have a little bit of a chance to dig into the conflict ones of these a little later. So Janie's been arriving to your meetings 10 minutes late every time, making it challenging to start on time. Is that misconduct? Conflict? Performance? Yeah. Look, and I didn't even slip you the answers first. Alita and Leslie. Yeah, great. It could result in conflict, right? Okay, so our second, but that is a performance management issue. Our second example here, instead of depositing club funds, Shane pocketed them. When you find out and ask him about them, he says, "Oh, I'm sure I'll be buying something for the club later on. It'll all even out." Misconduct, yeah. For sure. Fabulous. Look at that. These questions aren't too hard. Okay. This one, I flip back and forth on this, but Len forgot to include Bronwyn on an email inviting her to an upcoming meeting. Bronwyn found out and thinks Len doesn't want her there. Len. Right? There's for sure potential for conflict there. We've got two people. Yeah. Yeah. And performance. Yeah, he's not doing a very good job emailing, putting everyone on the CC list. Yeah. Great. We've got just a few more. Did I switch screens? Randy and Anne have been having a disagreement about the length of your planning meetings. Randy wants to keep them short as possible, where Anne wants some time for socializing. Conflict. We've got two people with differing. Yeah, this is great. Thanks so much for all your comments in the chat. This one enrages me. So Jeff has been cleaning up after every meeting and is annoyed that his co-leader Joe is spending all his time talking to parents as they pick up their kids rather than helping clean up. My husband's name is Andrew. You could switch Andrew and Catherine for Jeff and Joe, because Andrew would clean up and I would not shut up because I value the chatting so much more than a tidy room. Yeah, it does cause conflict. It would cause conflict in the club as it does in my house. The text messages, "Come inside, Catherine. Stop chatting with neighbors." So, oh. Robin has been disagreeing with the rest of the team on how to handle event funds. When she gets frustrated, she begins aggressively shouting and swearing at other team members. We can use this at home. If Andrew ever yelled at me for not coming inside to clean up, I could say it was misconduct. So that's where we can see really how you want to get conflict right at the beginning, right? She's frustrated. That's not the issue. You can get to a frustration about a disagreement on how to handle event funds. But when that sort of frustration and conflict and disagreement escalates, and then you're calling Alita and I and submitting incident reports. So that's why we want to get to conflict right at the start. Okay. Thank you so much for contributing, folks. Okay. So handling, well, we're not going to talk about misconduct all that much. It's not conflict. Usually it's one-sided, and it's not your job as a leader to manage misconduct, we want to give you some confidence to know what to do if you come across misconduct. So we've got a few sort of tidbits off to the side here. Is the action illegal? Does it pose a physical risk or emotional harm to a member? Is it contrary to our code of conduct or the youth safety policies or any of your provincial policies? If any of those are true, excuse me, then you're going to, then you have what you'll do then is submit an incident report through 4-H Canada or through the provincial website for an incident report identifying the type of misconduct and giving as much information as you can. And then someone at the provincial office will reach out to help you manage that. The chart we have on the right side of the page is available in the youth safety policies. It's also in the incident reporting quick reference guide. I'm not sure why it's called a quick reference guide. It's 30 pages. That's not quick, but I should have changed its name when we just updated it. So that chart there goes through all of the different types of things and knowing when you should or should not reach out to the fill out complete an incident report form. So if there's any risk of harm to children or suspected abuse, then you immediately report that to the local authorities as well as through the incident report. If there's a small conflict that you can manage on your own, go ahead and, that's obviously your first defense is to work through conflict on your own. But if it's repeated, if it's impacting your club's operations, that's a really great time to loop in some support from 4-H BC or from 4-H Canada. Does anyone have any questions about anything we've talked about so far?
Catherine, I'll just jump in really quick if that's okay as well. The misconduct procedures are also part of what you would do when you take the youth safety training, which I think everybody here has already. And it's also included in the refresher that you have to take when you update your CRC every 3 years as well. So this information will stay relevant. If anything changes, for example, this is why we do the refresher every 3 years, so that you're being given the most up-to-date information on how these procedures work.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunity for you to read about misconduct and the procedures around misconduct. Yeah, fabulous. So, okay. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about the roots of conflict. I've given a few sort of broad examples of the roots of conflict, but I'd really love it if I could have you folks write in the chat or speak out. What are some of the things when you think about conflict? What are the words that come to mind? How do you what do you think the origins of conflict are? What starts them? What just sort of what do you think? Brainstorm, misunderstanding. Yeah, and miscommunication for sure. Yeah. This is good. What do we, yes, control, misbalance of control. Yeah. Frustration, right? I think about my kids getting frustrated. Yeah. Yes. For sure. Yeah. So we've got these 6 now. Oh, not having all the facts, right? For sure. Do we have 8 people? Yeah. So we're going to break into, we thought about breaking into 6 groups. That would leave a few people all by themselves. So then do we want to 8 if we break into 3 groups, what do you think, Lauren? We set 4. That would put 2 people in a group all together. We could do that.
Yeah, we could try 3, and I mean, I was going to suggest 2 because then that's 4 per group.
2,
but
4. Let's do
if you
2.
want to try
Okay.
small, yeah, okay.
Let's do 2 groups, and then we can just or we could do it all as a group ourselves. But let's do 2 groups. And why don't we take we're going to pick 2 of these sections, and each group will talk about some of the tools or the ways you could go about countering this type of conflict. So in your handout, which is also linked to in the chat at the very top of the chat, there's a list of some of the techniques that you might use to combat different types of conflict that comes from a different area. So why don't we take the first 2, differences in ideas, perceptions, and values. And we can have one group will pop in and talk about what are, using the list that I sent you, or using your own thoughts, what are some of the tools or approaches you might use to combat conflict that is based on a difference in opinions, ideas, perceptions, or values. And then the second group can tackle what types of techniques would you use for differences in needs and expectations. So we'll go do that. Does anyone have questions about that? We'll go do that for 5 minutes. Talk about your type, your origin of conflict, and some of the ideas or techniques that you think might work to combat that, and then we'll come back.
Awesome. Okay, I've named each of the groups. So group 1 is differences in opinions, ideas, perceptions, and I couldn't squeeze values in there, but it's there. And number 2 is differences in needs and expectations. So we'll pop into the rooms and clarify if anybody has questions, but there you go. I'm going to open the rooms, and then you should get a little pop out on your screen.
All right. Does anyone want to say anything about what you discussed?
So we had number 1, so differences in opinions, etc. And there was a few points down the list here that kind of stood out to us. And I think actively listening, trying to talk it out. I think that a lot of times conflict can be completely avoided, especially when there's differences in opinions, ideas, perceptions, or values, just by listening to everyone involved.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that's not widely taught in this world, is good communication skills and good active listening skills. And that's something that 4-H definitely is kind of heads and tails above a lot of other organizations out there, because you actually are teaching youth how to communicate effectively. So with number 1, we had, like I said, active listening, talking it out, ensuring everyone is comfortable expressing themselves, confronting problems early, and also agreeing to disagree or discuss differences in values openly.
Yeah, great. That's wonderful. Was anyone from group 2 want to speak up?
I can share from group 2. I took some notes. So some of the things that we talked about were addressing needs and expectations early, and identifying individual needs, rather than just assuming that your needs are shared by others. Having time and space for discussions and asking questions, focusing on better communications, and reminding individuals, that we're all in this together, and coming back to the why we're here, asking everyone for suggestions for resolving and moving forward, and then finally ensuring that there's space for everyone to be heard, and that no one feels that their comments are being discounted.
That's great. Were there any, was there anything that confused you, that didn't make sense, that you wanted to explore, talk about? That's good. Okay. Oh, we were supposed to have this really beautiful slide for your, when you were giving feedback, because I really like looking into those guys' eyes. So thank you so much for contributing. And we've talked, the reason we talk about the roots or the origins of conflict is because it's always good to know where someone's coming from. Like Erica was saying, like if we get to what's going on at the beginning, then we know how to address that conflict, right? If what we have is a misunderstanding, we're going to handle it differently than if what we have is a real difference in opinions or values. Another way to organize, I think, right? Like I like to come at the way we think about things from a few different angles for different learners and when people think differently. So we talk about the roots of conflict, but we can also talk about types of conflict. So for this, we say we've got content conflict, and this is based on the information. So poor communication is often at the root of a content conflict, and restoring or correcting that information is the solution. So if we have conflict because people are misunderstanding how the rule of two works, right? This is the other half of my job, being risk management and youth safety. So I think of all of these, those related. So if those types of conflict. So if we have a problem where we're misunderstanding how the rule of two works, correcting that information, providing more information will sort of resolve that conflict. We have a concern type of conflict, and this is when individuals believe that they need to give up what they want or need if the other person gets what they want or need. So this is usually about resources, money, time, materials, goods, a spot at the show, or psychological power, honesty, respect. So to address a concern type of conflict, you want to find common goals, provide opportunities for both sides to speak, finding a cooperative solution that satisfies some, if not all, of the needs on both parts is the best solution to this type of conflict. This is also one of the more difficult types of conflict to resolve. And we're going to go through a process for looking at that in a few minutes. A third type of conflict is, I think Lauren commented on this in the chat earlier, is when there's a clash between individuals' backgrounds, values, or cultural traditions, where individuals see a situation from different perspectives based on their own backgrounds and experiences. And conflict can come when an individual does not recognize others' beliefs and tries to get them to change. And this type of conflict probably isn't going to be resolved through give and take and cooperation, but rather through acknowledging others' values, affirmations of respect, and a focus on teamwork and goals and shared goals. So content type of conflict we're going to solve by improving the information. A concern we're going to resolve through cooperation, and a conflict based in culture or values we're going to resolve using a mutual respect and focusing on mutual goals. So it's sometimes a little bit heavy to talk about conflict. like to throw in the middle of the session a little talk about how conflict can be productive and good. So if you can throw some ideas in the chat or unmute and talk, what are some of the good things that we see that can come out of conflict? Or are there any positives positive words you associate with conflict? New ideas. Yeah. 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 Right? Deeper human to human connection, learning new skills, a stronger team, improved communication, change. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. When you know you can get through it, it'll get you a stronger team for sure. Greater self-awareness, right? I find that a lot of the time it's that like exercising your brain, or we start staving off Alzheimer's by that exercising of our brain, by seeing other people's opinions. I'm always thinking about my brain staving off of my Alzheimer's. So conflict and Sudokus will do it for me, I guess. Yeah, opening your mind to seeing other ways of seeing things. So that's just a little break, right? Like they're knowing that our ultimate goal is these things, right? Like we're going to have conflict, but we're going to get greater self-awareness and work better together, develop trust through moving through that process. So, in the same way that we can only control our own selves, another really great thing to remember is that we can grow through a conflict experience. And I think it is active listening. I'm going to tell you a story after this. So we talked about conflict. We've talked about types of conflict, how we respond to different conflicts. And so where we're going to move into the sort of last half of this session is talking about some of the practical things we can do when we're in a conflict situation. And one of those things, we've heard it before, is we talk about active listening. And what do we mean when we say active listening? Being fully engaged when another person is talking to you. And the practice of not listening for what the person, for how you can respond, or listening for your spot to interject, but listening to hear what someone is saying. We have a list here, some of the things we can do to practice active listening. Open-ended questions. So an open-ended question is a question that cannot be answered with yes or no. An example might be, what projects do you think people want to work on this year? As opposed to, let's work on a cooking project. What else could we do to solve this? Versus, is there anything we could do to solve this? So if we're having a problem and I say, is there anything we can do to solve this? You're going to say yes, or you're going to say no. Whereas if I say, what else could we do to solve this? You're going to have to think of some ideas. You can't just, you could say nothing, but paraphrase, summarize, say it back. Say, have I got this right? Is this this is what I'm hearing from you, and then say the whole thing. And that way someone can correct you if you have a misunderstanding. It's also a way to prove that, or to show them that you're listening to them. This one is sometimes a dangerous one to do, but if you can do it right, to verbalize emotions, to say, this seems really frustrating for you, or I can see that it's really disappointing for you that your group won't be able to attend the event. I sense that you're angry. So that can backfire on you. It can, ramp things up, but there are studies that show that when you put a word to emotions, it decreases the heightened amygdala response, and it can decrease the intensity of the emotions. This is also a hard one. Try not to be judgmental. Maybe it's only hard for me. But it doesn't mean that you have to. No, Alita, it's hard for you. It doesn't mean you have to agree with someone. But trying not to be judgmental is listening with curiosity rather than judgment. Oh, that's interesting. If someone's talking, if they're frustrated about something, if you're having conflict, interrupting them is not a portion of active listening. And then exhibit positive nonverbal communication. This is make eye contact, nod, avoid distractions while you're in a conversation with someone. If you know you're entering a slightly heightened conversation, put your phone in your pocket. Look at someone and nod while they're talking. It's really hard in this sort of environment. You can't tell whether I'm looking, if I'm looking at the camera, I'm not looking, you guys are down here, but my camera's up there. So, but do those sorts of things where you're not multitasking while someone is talking as a part of active listening. I'm perfectly fine if you're eating or distracted right now during this, but I took my watch off so I don't get weird text messages about the weather and stop talking to you. Active listening is a fabulous tool for showing respect and for understanding where someone is, for understanding where someone is coming from. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions at this point in our active listening conversation? A lot of the times in a workshop, people like to break off and do like a little practice where, tell a story, and one partner tells a story and one partner is extremely distracted and doesn't pay any attention to them. And then you come back and talk about how it felt. I think we can, rather than doing that, we can understand that it feels awful if someone's looking at their phone while you're talking. And so we are on to a story that I'm going to tell you about an orange. Imagine yourself as, it's a quick story. Imagine that you are a market vendor and you have had a super busy day. And just as you're about to close up shop, you have two customers that run up at the exact same second, and they both want to buy an orange. And you only have one orange left. That's the story. What do you do with it? What do you do? You have one orange left and two people who want it. What are some of the things that you might do to solve this conflict? Cut it in half, right? Is that win-win or lose-lose? Yeah. I can see that Leslie's typing. It better be to us, because otherwise I know you're super distracted. Are there any other vendors who had orange? Ask the importance of it to each person. Yeah. Yeah. This is good. So I took a course. I took a course in conflict resolution last year, and this was one of the questions that came up. And I had more time to think about it than you did, so I Googled. And because this is a planned activity, is there another piece of fruit that you can offer, right? So what we're going to be talking about next is interest-based problem solving. So interest-based as opposed to position-based. And so what you do in this case, we're very lucky, is we ask both individuals what they need the orange for. And it turns out that one person is making orange juice and wants the flesh of the orange for their orange juice. And another person is making an orange loaf and needs the peel for the zest. So by getting to the individual interests, not what they want, they both showed up and said they wanted an orange, but once you get to their individual interests, you're able to satisfy both customers. Wouldn't life be fun if that were the way everything worked? So that is called interest-based problem solving. And interest-based problem solving is a technique that we use to get to the root of an issue and to solve the problem in a way that is as close to a compromise or a win-win solution for everyone involved. The example I use of the orange is pretty simplistic, but the strategy is the same. With interest-based problem solving, we have some key principles. Focus on the issues, not on the individuals. So we didn't ask which of the people that showed up to buy the orange is a better person or my friend or we focus on the issue, which is they both want an orange, right? Use reason rather than power. We didn't ask which one of them was the key leader or who has been in the organization longer. We're using reason rather than power. Just because I work for 4-H doesn't mean I'm right. And then the last principle is to focus on the interest, not on the position. So they both came with the same position, right? And you think about this in your own case. Say someone wants your meeting to start at 6 and one person wants it to start at 7. The position is, what time are we having the meeting start? Whereas the interests might be, well, I have to get home by 9 because I need to make sure that I put the kids to bed, or well, I can't get there until 7 because, right? So the interest is a different thing than the position. And this is really useful for us to remember in our assumptions going into this type of problem solving, is that we're assuming that the most effective solutions to problems are those that are reached with all the affected parties involved in making the decision and in determining the implementation of the solution. We're not going to have a meeting where 3 of us resolve a problem and then let the 4th person know how we resolved it. The other thing that we're assuming, and especially in 4-H, and if you're dealing with other leaders or parents, is that the parties are in a relationship with each other and the relationship is going to continue. So group decisions must consider the relationship aspect of a problem as part of the solution as much as the content aspect. So how you solve a problem, how you talk to each other, how you get through dealing with that is as important as what the outcome of your problem is. This part feels a bit flighty to me, but I sort of like it. I'm going to read out a list of things that I've read while thinking about interest-based problem solving. And I think that 1 or 2 of them will speak to you. And I want you to just write that one down and remember it. And that's all. So separate the people from the problem. Be soft on the people and hard on the problem. Focus on interests, not positions. When positions look incompatible, look at interests. Generate options for mutual gain. Work for a win-win solution. Process is just as important as the outcome. Practice direct communication and talk with others, not about them. So I hope that 1 or 2 of those sounded like something that you can remember one day. Yeah. Come on. There we go. So it's nice to say, oh, we're going to talk about interests. Let's get down to the interests. But what are some of the things that you can say to start a conversation? How can it's really tough when someone is stuck in their position to switch into thinking about their interests. So we've got a few things here that we can say. This is a bit of active listening, but a little bit of drilling down into what is someone's interest rather than their position. So tell me more about the situation from your perspective. This is this curiosity thing we've got going on. So if I understand what you're saying, and then paraphrase, right? Can you tell me what you are most concerned about? What matters the most to you here? Or if I've got it right, you're concerned that. Or if we could do this, would that help? We see that a lot of it's questions, open-ended questions, things you can say to get someone to open up, to invite conversation, and to invite a discussion. Okay. So the steps in interest-based problem solving, you have these 6 steps on the sheet that was handed out to you. You also have the 6 conflict, I think 6 conflict stories. So I'm just going to go over these steps, and then we're going to pop into those breakout rooms again where you can work through those steps. We'll come back and take it up, have some final thoughts, and then be on our way. So the steps involved in interest-based problem solving: tell the story, look at the problem, what are the issues, ask clarifying questions. Remember, we're going to separate the issue from the people. We're trying to get to the interests. So that's the second one. Get into your interests, explore people's motivations. Look at the options, lay them all out. I do this with my kids, but like, here are all of the options, even the ones that seem like they make no sense at all, but brainstorm as many options to the solution that you can come to, and then evaluate them. What works, like how well they respond to those interests that we found out in the first phase there. Agree upon a selected action as a group, come up with a plan to implement it, and some follow-up plans. And I like to also do, like, what's our plan if this goes off the rails? So does anyone have any questions about those steps? I saw a great like a worksheet. I love a worksheet. I haven't got one for this, but a worksheet where it's like all drawn out, where different, to get to like red light, green light, you know, does this solution work for me? Does this? So, okay. So what we'll do is we'll pop into the groups again. And then we'll just have, I think there's 6 conflict scenarios. Rather than assign them to you, why don't we just pop into the groups, and as a group, you can pick which one works for you, and then go through those 6 steps, and then we'll come back in about 7 minutes.
Sounds good, Catherine. Sorry, just to clarify, the scenarios are in the handout, right?
I believe they are. Yes. Second page
is
steps,
the
and
second
the
page.
scenarios are all in the handout. And
Okay,
the handout
perfect.
in the chat.
Awesome. Sounds good. Okay, rooms are open. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right.
I try and do it when you're not talking. So
I'll start. Our group did scenario 4.
Okay.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay, so our group did scenario 4, and I was elected as the spokesperson for our scenario for this time. And so basically we've all experienced, or we have experienced scenario 4. And so we thought that would be a good one. So, you know, the problem or the story is that not everybody has commitments and whatnot, and not everybody can make a meeting held on Tuesday. And so new members are interested in joining, but that doesn't work for them. So, so that's the problem. And the interests are, you know, trying to find out why, you know, so that's, I think, finding out why, what the motivation is to solve the problem. The motivation is really trying to find a solution so that everybody can be at the meeting. That's really the motivation to solve it, so that everybody can be involved. Our options, brainstorming the possible solutions. So how can we resolve this? And we thought, well, you know, is there a way we can resolve it so that everybody can be involved, maybe even some of the time? So maybe having a meeting on a Tuesday one month and then a Wednesday the other month. That way, you know, maybe they can't make every meeting, but at least they can make some meetings and still be part of it. So that's one option that we brainstormed. For the evaluation, analyzing the options and interests, and so how well will that work? I think that you know, again, communicating with the members. I can't remember exactly what we talked about then, but something that came out after was also kind of just setting up a timeline. So we may have a resolution, but let's revisit, let's reevaluate after this time, because people's schedules may change. So sometimes that knowing that we're going to reevaluate if it doesn't work for everybody, sometimes helps with any conflict that might arise out of the final decision. And then commitment, agree to support and select the options. So will we basically involving everybody in that final decision to commit to that decision that is able to, I guess.
Yeah.
And then implementing the action. So, you know, having the meeting on say a Tuesday or a Wednesday and going forward, and that actually gives closure as well. So once everybody's involved, I think, and had their say, and then once a decision's made, then it kind of just gives closure. So hopefully there won't be any further conflict.
Great. Yeah.
Did I miss anything, ladies?
No, you were great. Thanks, Shannon.
So good. All right. Yeah, I think that, right? These like logistical problems. Yeah. And do we have someone from our second group who wanted to volunteer? What
We
scenario?
talked about the same scenario.
Oh, did you really?
Oh.
And did you have the same interests, or did you come up with the same solutions or thoughts? I love that that was a good, that was my idea to put that one in. Everyone's drawn to it. So
I think we had similar items. Our conversation was very focused on experiences of this. And things that individuals have tried. And we talked a lot about, you know, making sure that everyone there's a good understanding shared by everyone of what goes into the decision-making process sometimes, about, you know, when a date can't be changed, why that is. Rachel shared about how her club has done a survey to get input on dates that work for families, and to get information in advance about dates that potentially could be planned around when people are away, such as spring break. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, and it looks like our timing is coming up well for my plan. I'm just going to give you a few final thoughts. Then we'll have a thank you slide, which has my email on it. If anyone has any wants to reach out or has any book recommendations. And then we'll turn the recording off and we can continue for a few minutes after that. So my final thoughts, I've said this before, you only have control over your own actions and reactions. If you don't deal with a conflict, it will not likely go away. We talked about this when we talked about the positives of conflict. Lean into discomfort as a growth opportunity. Leslie is laughing at me. Remember why remember why we're doing this. Leslie and I have known each other for 15 years. So remember why you're doing this, right? We're here for the program, for the youth, for the people we're working with. And when two volunteers or leaders are at conflict, the members see it and their experience is impacted. And I think that all of us who are here are really cognizant of that. So just want to thank you all for taking your time on your Saturday morning to come and talk to us, and really appreciate all of your comments and energy that you've put into the discussion.